valve body all back together. What we need to do is align this hole here. There's a little hole right there, if you can see that. Now what I do, I have this little tool. It's actually 532 bolt, and I've machined the tip of it down to about 3 mil or 130 thou, and you'll find that that just sits in there nice and snugly. A little bit loose here, but I think in the shop manual they recommend 120 thou. This is actually 156 thou. So it's a lot snugger there. And the idea that we're doing is we have to line when the selector on the transmission is in drive. We need to align these teeth here. So what you do is you just put that little pin in there and just rotate that wheel around until you'll feel it step in, and that's locked. You can see that. And that now is ready to go back in the transmission. But before I put all that back up, I'm going to do a reverse flush of the transmission. Up here, that big hole there on the right hand side of the vehicle, next to the guide pin, that's your pump inlet. Or basically what it means, that's the tube or the channel that's sucking through the filter, and then it goes through the valve body, and then it goes through the bottom one, which is the pump outlet. So I'm just going to whiz off these magnets and give them a good clean. And what I find is that if you get a 10mm transmission oil cooler hose, that'll fit nice and snugly in there. And you can either just blow air through it, or ideally some oil. Make sure it's the DCT oil or the oil that's suitable for these transmissions, and you'll just get a reverse flushing effect back through the filter. You can't replace these filters unless you pull the transmission completely apart, and even then you need to take the pump off, and then you bolt the filter and pump back into the transmission together. Now I've just dressed a piece of hose there, just so it doesn't have a sharp edge or cuts off when I push it in there. And that'll just slide in there nice and snugly, like that. Don't force it in, you don't want to cut the rubber on anything. You just jiggle it in, and then at the other end we can either blow air or ideally oil. Oil will have a better cleaning, flushing effect. And take that plug off there. We'll probably take this one off. A bit of oil will probably splash down there as well. After we finish the whole job, probably be a good idea to do an oil change as well, because we've disturbed everything there. Now these magnets are on pretty hard sometimes. Sometimes you just need to lever them a little bit with a screwdriver just to get it loose, and then just nip them out, and we'll just clean that filter as much as we can. On top of the filter there'll be muck there as well, so make sure you clean that. Clean it all off as best you can, and then just blow it out. Always trying to blow out of the transmission, not back into it. So it's pretty dirty. There we go, I've cleaned the top of the filter. You can see that's nice and clean there. Blown it out, tried to blow it out this way. Also had a screwdriver in the bottom of the filter, tried to scrape out any other muck that's there. You can see a little bit's left there. And I've cleaned the two magnets. There's one also on that side cover there. So when you put these magnets on, I always try and put them in a spot where, like that, it's not going to be in the way of anything. But the idea is to, instead of having the magnet flat against the surface, and you almost get double the surface area of the magnet working to collect all that rubbish. So you don't have to put it exactly, the old one was in here, just on that flat bit there, but I'm going to just put them like this. If they're not in the way of anything, they're not going to be harming anything. And I might even add another neodymium magnet there as well, just for good measure. These gaskets there that go between the bell body and the case, just straighten them out a little bit as well. It'll just save a lot of headache when you're fitting it. They do have these little lock bits, but sometimes they're out of shape and they'll fall out or give you trouble while you're putting the valve body back on. Okay, all ready to go back in. Just move that cable out of the way. It's just a reverse of what we did when we took it out. It is a pretty tight fit. Now before I put it in, I've just got to make sure that that little wheel, that little hole on that wheel is lined up. And also you've got to be very careful you don't damage the mechatronics while you're putting it back in. And that looks alright. So I can just slide that back in. Okay, I've put the 2 bolts on the plug there as well, and now I can put that bolt that holds, or that pin that that wheel swivels on. One goes through there. Okay. So if everything's gone well, I should be able to just pull that pin out. And it's a good idea to have a look through the hole just to make sure that it's still lined up properly. Now if you've done it all correctly, this little pin should just pull out, but you'll find that it is actually quite tight there to pull it out. And the reason that is, if you remember back earlier on when I mentioned that little spring steel unit on the teeth there that keeps the tension on the gears on the teeth. So if you give this a little bit of a wiggle here on the selector, you'll see that it actually is lined up correctly. So there's just a little bit of detent on that spring steel bit on the teeth. So you can see you can't see from that angle, but if you just put a bit of pressure on, that pin will come out easily, and I can just push it in. I just need to push this a little bit and it just goes straight in. And park, reverse, neutral, drive. If I just put a little bit of tension on there, that'll just drop straight in. And I've marked it with liquid paper so I can see that it has actually gone into that. Anyway, I'm going to put everything back together now, put that side cover on, make sure you clean the magnet in it before you put it on. To fill it, we fill the oil here on this plug, and like I showed you earlier, the level plug's just behind the left-hand axle. Don't forget to put your plug back in and tighten up this, and also remove that little pin. You don't want to leave that in there either. Cover magnet, it has like a little plastic clip on there that you just need to remove. You can just get a screwdriver and it just pops out like that. And then you can just take the magnet out and give it a clean. And I like the way they've put this one on. They haven't put it flat on the cover. It's elevated a little bit so the magnet can work both front and rear. Now you can either glue that clip back on. Didn't like the glue, so I just drilled a hole through there and just put some copper wire through, and that's snug as a bug in the rug. Okay, put it back on, and now I've just got to climb up, and where that plug goes through that O-ring, I've just got to work it slowly so it doesn't cut that O-ring. There is a little chamfer on the plastic cover, so that makes it easier to push on as well. Got the clip back on the radiator hose, and that just slides on. Just sort of have to maneuver it on a little bit. Turbo hose back on and pipe, and I've just moved that clamp around just so there's easier access from the bottom. Now, I'm not going to put the stone guards on until I test it, and it's a good idea to just double check all your work as you go along. Make sure you haven't forgotten to tighten something, and now we're going to refill it. And I'll be using the Tritec DSG or DCT transmission fluid. Basically, I'm going to be filling it from the top until the oil starts coming out of that plug there, and then I'll just start it briefly, turn it off, and then top it up again until it just starts coming out there. Okay, I've put the oil in. Now we start it up and run it till the transmission gets to between 35 and 45 degrees. If it goes over 45, you need to let it cool down to get the correct oil level, and you check it with the motor running. You can see it trickling out now, but we're still not up to about 35 degrees, so I'll put the plug back in and let it warm up, and then I'll just check it. Make sure you don't go over 45 degrees. Alright, got it all back together. Oil in it, coolant in it. I'm not going to put the air filter on. Hopefully it won't play up because it hasn't got the mass airflow sensor on it. And I'll take it for a test run. So far there's no warning on the dash. Let's see how reverse goes. Just turn that off. Look at that. So far looking promising. Shifting like a beauty. The engine light's on. Hopefully that's just regarding the mass airflow sensor. It's not connected, but the transmission's shifting beautifully. You may need to go through a few stop and starts or do the adaptation on it, but this one looks like it's going okay anyway. Even if you don't do the adaptation, it will adapt on its own over a period of time. Okay, got all the oil back in and checked, and we've got the air filter. Not coming out of there. Fiddly to manoeuvre around through there. Usually just one way to do it. There we go. That's the bit right there that's a little bit difficult to get in, but you can get your hand underneath and just lift it, and then the whole thing just pops straight in. And it's got the little locking pin there. You'll end up popping this up and off a few times. There we go. Now we can clear the mass airflow code. So we've got one code. Everything in the transmission looks alright. Let's see what that code is. There we go, just as we expected, the mass airflow sensor. So I'll just clear that code. In this situation, the dual clutch, the plastic retainers were intact. I couldn't find any bits of plastic in the transmission. So that's why I went ahead and did the valve body and solenoid clean. Seems to have fixed the problem. Cleared the code. There we go. I'll take it for another test run and we'll check it again in the morning when it's cold, see what happens. Hopefully fix the problem. Anyway, I hope that's helped. Thank you for watching.